What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today's video is going to be continuing the spring cleanup of our R1. In today's video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be upgrading the rear tire that you see down here to a 190, and we're going to be changing the oil in this bike. Stick around, I'll show you how it's done. Okay, getting into it, the first thing we need to do is get this thing up on a stand of some sort. Now, I have seen people put jacks on both sides with the spools like that, but it's really kind of dangerous. In this case where I don't have folding pegs, you could probably use those too, but really it's just kind of dangerous and it's kind of tearing up the bike. For those of you that have a sport bike, really any bike that has rear spools, I'll highly suggest investing in one of these stands. They're less than 30 bucks on Amazon. I'll even put a link in the description below for one. And definitely pick yourself up as soon as you can get one if you're planning on working on the bike. Moving forward, the other tools that you need, you're going to need a hammer and kind of a skinnier axle bolt or some kind of long bolt. You can hammer the bolt out right there, which is going to be removed with a 32 millimeter socket. You can use either a wrench or an impact like I use here. And then you're going to want two 12 millimeter open end wrenches to loosen the nuts that you see right there. Those are going to allow the chain to slide forward and to come off without having to break that chain. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and loosen, again, these 12 millimeter nuts. You're going to go ahead and loosen this back nut that you see right here by simply doing one of those. You're going to go ahead and loosen that nut, maybe let's say a centimeter back, and then we're going to spin the whole thing inward. This is on both sides is going to allow, again, this front or this rear wheel to slide forward to get that chain loose. And this part of the spring cleanup, what we're going to be doing is upgrading the 180 tire that's on the back here to a 190. Now, some might say that's not an upgrade because you won't turn as fast with the 190 because it's a bigger, rounder tire. In my particular instance, I find it to be a little bit better for my particular riding. You guys do as you do. Now, I have a little bit of slipping from the rear of this bike. Now, if you guys run into that, there could be several things contributing to that. Very first thing is that you might have an old tire. So you might use your finger here and dig into it and be like, oh, it's a soft tire. The first thing you're going to want to do is look around the edge of the tire as it spins through for a date code. Typically, you're going to see that there is some sort of box that will be circled. And unfortunately, it's not on this side of the tire, but it will tell you some sort of date. For example, like this here, it'll say the 29th of, September or whatever, 2021. Whatever that date might be, you'll be able to see that. But more likely the cause of that is improper inflation. That might be overinflation, that might be underinflation. And typically you'll see somewhere on the swing arm or somewhere on the bike, it will tell you the exact pressure you should have in your tires. And if it doesn't, you can always look it up online. 90% of the time, this is the problem. People don't really realize what the actual problem is. For me, though, that is not the issue. This tire is not hard, it's not old, and it's inflated correctly. The problem is, for some reason, it's still kicking out. I don't know if that's the type of tire, but it seems to be a problem. Now, I haven't come out of underneath me, but unfortunately for the guy that had this bike before me, it came out of underneath him. That's how we got the bike the way we did. So moving forward, we're going to continue to get this thing swapped out. Okay, and I just zipped off the 32 millimeter nut. I went ahead and took my secondary axle bolt that is just a spare, that's slightly smaller, and pushed it out so the main bolt's coming out. I'm going to grab this in my hands and pull it all the way out, then pull out my secondary bolt. This whole thing should drop then, and I'm going to pull the chain off the actual rear sprocket. Now with the wheel out of the way, we went ahead and set the chain to the side as well as the brake caliper. And with the wheel off, the first thing we need to do is take out the valve stem and drain all the air we can out so we can break the bead. We are going to be using our DIY tire changer that we have setting here. So I'm going to get that thing broke apart and the new tire put on. Okay, and with the tire bead broke down now we got it on the mounter, demounter. I'm going to go ahead and pull everything off, and we'll get this tire off and take a look at it. Alright, so if I'm comparing the tires right now, side by side, you'll see the 190 on the right, and there's a huge height difference, and I'm assuming that's because this the old 180 is kind of stretched out, where this is still pressed narrow, it hasn't been attached to a wheel yet, because there's no way there's an 1.5 inch difference in height from a 190 to 180. That's just not possible. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get this thing installed. Hopefully, we won't have any problems, and we'll get it back on the bike right now. Okay, so we got our tire on now. A couple little mishaps. You can see there's a couple little Mars here. I'm not really happy about that. Clearly, the rim protectors did squat. But nonetheless, I got to spin this thing around 180. I just wanted to show you that. We're going to throw this thing back on, and then we got to get into an oil change just shortly after. All right, and there we go. I actually think the tire looks really good on this bike, so I can't complain as far as looks-wise. We'll see when I ride it. But it's time to move forward and get the oil change in this thing. Okay, and so moving on, it's time to change the oil in this thing, and this procedure is actually pretty simple. The manufacturer likes to say to do it on the side stand, don't put it on a rear stand. You can do it either way. The only thing, if you put it on a rear stand, because the bike's going to be sitting straight up, you might get some oil on your exhaust, but it's probably going to happen anyways when you replace the front oil filter. So first things first, we got to talk about what we need. So obviously we need an oil pan. We need a 17 millimeter socket of some sort. An oil funnel, for those of you that have 3D printers, there will be a link in the description for this below. It's specifically for this bike for you to have the right angle and not have to worry about getting oil running all the way down the side of your bike. Then obviously you need a filter and oil. Now some of you are saying right now, wait a minute, that's not motorcycle oil. No, it's not. And in fact, most people hate the discussions about oil and whether it's good or whether it's not good, but let's have one anyways. So a little background, and this is each to his own. You guys do whatever you want with your oil, whatever kind of oil you want to use. I've been using both motorcycle oil and regular car oil synthetic blend for, I don't know, the last 30 years in all kinds of different stuff and never had a problem. I have friends and family who have had the larger sport bikes and have run nothing but car oil in them for 30,000+ miles and never replaced a clutch. So generally people say, oh, car oil, that's a no-no because it doesn't have the friction modifiers for a wet clutch system. Okay, well, let me put it this way. I rode dirt bikes for I don't know how many years as a child. I never had the means to get motorcycle oil, and guess what? I never replaced the clutch. Never, ever had to. The only time you usually have to replace a clutch is typically when you're wearing it out and not using it correctly. So, in my experience, I've been perfectly fine with using car oil. Now, you guys can do whatever you want. With this particular oil, the reason I have it, well, Advance Auto had a sale on it for $10 for the 5-quart jug. And then they had a $10 mail-in rebate, so basically it was free, so I got a bunch of them. So why wouldn't I use it? 1. 2, well, here's the thing. You guys might have saw the video I did when I replaced the clutch in this thing. The clutch pack was like $30. So literally, I could actually use this oil and change the clutch every single time I did an oil change and cost the same amount of money. Why wouldn't I do that? But again, that's not usually necessary. You guys can do whatever you want. Choose whatever you want. If I'm using motorcycle oil, I've always used a Yamaha's oil. I've never used nothing else. Even in Sea-Doos and stuff like that, I use a Yamaha oil. I don't like any of the Sea-Doo Bombardier stuff. There's plenty of different oils out there. They seem kind of sticky. I've never really liked them. It's either that or Mobil 1 motorcycle oil. There's only 2 motorcycle oils I use. When it comes to basic motorcycles though, and if I even care about anything, I'm putting oil as long as it's some sort of synthetic blend. Now, another little lesson to be learned is what people don't know, a synthetic oil. Well, a synthetic oil can simply be 2 oils combined, which means it could be 2 conventional oils mixed together. Now it's man-made, it's considered synthetic. So another little myth for people that think, oh, it's made from this crazy refinery. No, not really. So most modern-day oils are pretty much made to handle whatever it is that's needed. And again, I've had no luck. You guys use whatever you want. And to maybe more elaborate on what I mean, comparing my riding style to maybe your riding style might be different. Now, I don't ride a whole lot. I might put 300 miles on it. By that point, I'm changing the oil. That's why the oil, when I take it out, is still really clear and see-through. If you ride hard and you ride a lot and you put a lot of miles on your bike, you might consider using actual motorcycle oil because it's that extra protection. It's probably worth it in your case. But for somebody that's a light casual rider like myself, the car oil perfectly suits me, if that makes better sense. So first step is getting your bike ready for the oil change. Some people like to start the bike up. I don't typically. If there's any moisture, I like the fact that the moisture sits at the bottom, so it's going to drain anyways. That's what I prefer. The bike hasn't been ridden in, well, a little bit of time, so it's the next day from what the last part you saw was, so it's been at least 24 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and drain the oil. I'm using it on the kickstand. I'm not putting it on a rear stand, so it's leaning over. It should miss most of the exhaust. And then I'll put a rag over the header so it doesn't really soak into the header and I don't have to worry about that smell for a while. But the main thing that you're going to want to do, again, your fairings probably look a little bit different from mine, but they're pretty much the same setup. You're going to pull out that bolt right there, that one there. Essentially, you could take out those 2 if you want, and then this one here on both sides, and this bottom shelf should drop off. My suggestion is put a piece of cardboard underneath it, so when you drop it, it doesn't scratch up your fairing, and then just kind of slide it out underneath it, and you'll be all open. I'm not going to make you watch me take out bolts, but I'll get that all drained, and then we'll move forward and get this thing ready to be filled up. Okay, and so now my filter has changed. The oil's almost all completely drained out. It's a little bit of tiny nothing coming out of it right now. Oh, no, it's done. I want to show you a little trick. I went ahead and put the fairing back on because some of you might be changing, if you follow what the manual says, you might be changing your oil, not your filter. The manual sometimes likes to tell you to switch your oil filter every other oil change. That's up to you guys, whatever you guys want to do. But I want a little trick for you here. Use your oil to your advantage. So what you're going to want to do here, a lot of you are going to be struggling if you're doing that because you can't see the oil filter hole. I'm sorry, the oil drain plug hole. So use the oil to your advantage. Go ahead and take a light, shine the light underneath the bike. And you can see what we can see now, right? Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's easy to do. Like I said, you just have to get your hand over top of the oil, but there is our drain hole. I'm going to go ahead and put our plug in right now, and we're going to fill her up. Okay, so here you see we have the oil funnel in place, and you see how it's kind of angled so it catches the oil doesn't spill down the side. That's kind of the reason for this funnel. But a little disclaimer too, as I was saying a little bit ago, as far as the type of oil you're using, keep in mind, I don't put a lot of miles on my bike. So like this oil here probably has 300 miles on it. And if you saw it coming out of this bike, it looked almost, the camera doesn't pick it up, but it's clear, crystal clear, you can see through it. It has maybe 300 miles, sorry. I don't put a whole lot of mileage on my bikes. And so for those of you, depending on how you ride, if you guys ride rigorously, you ride hard and you ride a long time, you probably want to use a motorcycle oil. But for me, again, I don't ride a whole lot. And even when I did for bikes back in the day, it was perfectly fine. Okay, so when it's time to fill up the oil, essentially you want to get the bike as level as possible. You're going to start off with approximately 3 quarts. If you look here, you'll see that there's a little lower marker here. You see a little dash and then one upper right here. That is your midway point. This is where you want to be in when the bike is perfectly level. It's not sitting on the stand, it's sitting level up, you're holding it. It should be somewhere closer to the top here, so maybe like a centimeter from the very, very top up here, just below this upper line that you see right here. And then what we're going to want to do after we get that oil in, we want to run the bike for about 3 to 5 minutes, let it warm up, because essentially if you think about it, this is not like a car where you could fill up the oil filter and it comes from the bottom. It's coming sideways, so you can't put oil in the filter to start. You just got to put it on. And so the bike basically essentially has to suck oil into that. I've heard of people doing diag mode and just cranking it over to get the oil in. Maybe it's a little excessive, maybe it's not. I don't know. I've never done that. But I've had luck with literally just cranking these things over and they start up and they're perfectly fine. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to pour the oil in right now. I'm going to get about 3 quarts in there. It should get about full, and then you'll see after it runs and cycles through, it'll be low again. We'll have to add just a little bit more. All right, so there's our level with the bike up level. After about 3 quarts, you can see how tall it is. It's time to go ahead and run this thing for about 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, so it's all warmed up now. I went ahead and put another half a quart in. So right now I have a total of 3.5 quarts after being warm. And I will show you exactly what my crankcase looks like and my oil window, which is right about level right there. So that's about where you want. And from what you read online, most people are around 3.5 quarts. Every bike can differ. I don't know how or why that is if people aren't draining oil completely, but that's about where you should be at. Nonetheless, after your bike's warm, you should see it just underneath that top line. All right, guys. Well, that is a wrap on this video. I hope you guys like the content and basic stuff of getting your R1 Spring ready. If you like the comment, definitely throw that thumbs up. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button so you guys can see the new videos right when they come out. And now it's time for me to give this bike a quitting that's well deserved. I'll see you guys on the next one.